So, good evening all. Thanks for joining me in your wish to have stress-free kosher holidays. I don't know if it'll be stress-free. Don't sue me if it isn't stress-free, but perhaps we can go through. It's an opportunity to just review and go through a number of different areas, both in halacha, but I want to start off to talk more in terms of the hashkafa and the challenges and the opportunities that a vacation presents. The Mefarshim all ask a question on a Rashi 2.5 weeks ago, about the Meraglim, about the spies that Moshe Rabbeinu sent. That they ask a potential contradiction within Rashi himself. Rashi makes two comments. Rashi says, number one, he says, Kulam Anoshim. The Pasuk says they were all Anoshim. Anoshim means not just telling us their gender, right? It was telling us they were men of stature. These were Anoshim Chashuvim, Rashi says. They were Chashuvim. Kol Loshen and Anoshim B'Mikra is Loshen Chashivos. They were significant, they were dignified, they were worthy of the title. Uba'oisa Sha'ak Sherim Hoyu, says Rashi. At that point in time, at point of departure, they were still kosher. They were still good, tzaddikim, anoshim. These were very, very amazing people. In fact, the Ramban notes that they were listed in rank in order of greatness, which means Yehoshua was only number 5. In terms of greatness, Yehoshua, who went on to be very great, at the point of departure, he wasn't by any means the greatest. He was number 5 in the list. So on the one hand, Rashi is telling us at that moment in time they were big tzaddikim. And then Rashi, only a few psukim later, says, Vayelchu vayovoyu. The pasuk puts two words together. They went and they returned. And it puts them together to teach us, say Chazal, Ma biosom be'etzora'ah, af halichosom be'etzora'ah. Just as when they came back, we know they had evil designs in their heart. They had the wrong clue, the wrong view of the situation, what Rashi calls Eitz Ra'ah. So Vayelchu is put together that also when they went, they had Eitz Ra'ah, they had evil design in their heart. And the question which many ask is, Rashi seems to contradict himself, make up your mind. At that point in time, were they Anoshim, were they great, or were they people full of Eitz Ra'ah, their hearts full of evil intent? Rav Belsky, Zechronu Levracha, gave the following answer. He says there are some people whose entire Yiddishkeit, their strength, is when they are betoich hamachane, when they are in shul, when they are surrounded by the supportive network, which we need and which is really important. But when they were betoich hamachane, when a boy is in yeshiva, maybe when a girl is in SEM, it's an artificial environment. It's an amazing environment, but it's artificial. It's not necessarily a measure of who you are. To be a yid, to be a tzaddik in Mea She'arim is, depends how you define the tzaddik. But Toich HaMachane, they were Anoshim Ksherim. Within, surrounded by the Oil Moyed and Moshe and Aaron and things, they were great people. They were indeed men of stature. But then one thing happened. Vayelchu. They took a step. They took a step outside into an alien, unfriendly environment, a hostile environment from a values perspective. Game over. Vayelchu. The minute Vayelchu, they'd taken that first step, because it seems that there was something, without not the time or place to go into what that might have been, but there was something there that meant that their entire status of being Anoshim Ksherim, of being strong, was dependent on being within the locus, the environment where they were. The minute Vayelchu, one step out, Eitz Ra'ah. They lost their connection. And that just shows one of the challenges that we face. When we go away, when we go to somewhere which is not surrounded by the people and the support network, the spiritual support network that we are used to and we deserve, hopefully, and is so important. So the real test of a person is, who are you? And one of the ways of testing is, how do you behave? What do you do when the rabbi's not looking, when somebody else is not looking? And a holiday is an amazing opportunity in terms of self-awareness, and also an opportunity, if one's going with a family and with others, to show what it means. A Jew is a Jew wherever they are. It makes absolutely no difference. Of course, we try and surround ourselves with a supportive network to keep us strong, with good school and good teachers and all the things that we need. But who are you really? Be aware of that as you step out, wherever it is that you're going to. That's the first point. The other is Vayetze Yaakov mi Be'er Shava. Yaakov leaves Be'er Shava and he goes to Harana. Asks Rashi, what do you mean Vayetze? He already left. We know he already left. Says Rashi, when he departed, he took with him Ziv, Hoid, and Hodor. These are expressions of, in Yiddish we would say, the Schönkeit, the luster, the beauty of Yiddishkeit. Yaakov made sure that wherever he was, Reb Gedalia Shah puts it this way. He says a beautiful thing. He says an astronaut that went to the moon, they took with them everything. They were kind of externally on the moon, but really they weren't. Even their air supply, they were totally sealed in, their communication, everything. So in that sense, they didn't leave Earth. Or at least they weren't on the moon. They weren't actually there. They were surrounded by their protective bubble. And what a Jew needs to do is wherever they go, is to take with you. We always think about it, and I really appreciated this pshat because I always learned this Rashi and understood it in terms of Yaakov went and in terms of the impression on the place. Yotza zivo, yotza hadara. It departed. That's not. He's turned it around brilliantly into something positive. He took it with him. The beauty, the grace, the dignity, the grandeur, the glory of what it means to be a Jew, the ziv, the shine. Ziv means to shine. The hoid, the beauty, the hodor, one is inner, one is external beauty. He took it with him wherever Yaakov was. He was automatically surrounded by his ziv, his hoid, his hodor. And that's what we need to do. Wherever it is that we go, there's an opportunity. It depends on how safe the place is, to what extent you're able to identify Jewishly. But when there is an opportunity, remember, utilize that opportunity. It can be an incredible opportunity for Kiddush Hashem, what should be the real beauty of being a good Jew, that people turn around and say, I want my kids to look like that. That's what it's like. That's what it should be, to be a mensch. You take the ziv, the hoid, and the hoda with you, and be conscious. Be conscious that you're taking it with you. One final idea in hashkafa before we get into the halacha. The Chasam Sofer comments on a very interesting Gemara, shall we say. We won't go into details, but the Gemara is discussing in Gittin, there's a Mishnah, and there's a Machlokes Beis Hillel and Beis Shammai, what are grounds for divorce. So the Gemara is discussing that. And the Gemara says, even, possibly, according to one opinion, Hikdicha loy tavshiloi. If she burns his supper, that's grounds for divorce. Is that what she does to you? Yeah? If she burns that was a very knowing laugh. If she burns his supper, that's grounds for divorce, which is a very strange Gemara. What does that mean? And the Chasam Sofer puts a brilliant twist on this. He says, imagine that a wife, a woman that is preparing a supper, there's guests coming, and the food burns. So what does she do? I don't know. It hasn't happened to me, mainly because I don't prepare anything. But I imagine you go scrounging around the food, you scrounging around the freezer and see if you've got something you can reheat and throw a dressing over it and make it look all amazing. One thing you do not do is just serve it and say, sorry, it got burnt. You won't do that. Im hikdicha loy tavshiloi. Tavshiloi. It's not that she burnt it. Anybody can burn food. But she served it. She served it to him. She wouldn't serve it to the guest. She served it to him. Hikdicha tavshiloi. That shows, that's just indicative of the fact that something in the root of the relationship is not right. It goes both ways. I'm sure there's a male-female thing as well, I have no doubt. But that's the point. Says Rabbi Yankel Galinsky, he uses this Chasam Sofer very beautifully as a moshel. He says, for going on holiday. Do we serve Hashem on holiday the burnt bits? Do we take every leniency in the book and give him the b'di'eveds, the things that are, well, maybe there's one opinion. You know the old joke about the fellow that goes to, who, or during his life, he always took the most lenient opinion in everything, and he always justified himself, says, well, there is such an opinion. And he gets to Gan Eden after 120 years, and they open a rusty wooden door, and there's a table and a chair and a naked bulb, and he says, what's this? And they say to him, this is Gan Eden, according to one opinion. But anyway, do we serve Hashem? Do we serve Hashem the burnt bits, but for ourselves we get the best villa that we can afford? And we make sure that we are the good stuff, so to speak, we keep for ourselves. That's indicative of where are we at with the relationship. Do we drop our standards of kashrus, of davening, of tznius, of all the different things that we would never dream of doing somewhere else? Sadly, there is, so I am told, there can be such a tendency. Remember, this is an opportunity to demonstrate to ourselves, to our families, to everybody, what our Yiddishkeit really is and what it really means to us. Having said that, all I've done is softened you up and ensured that you're not going to shoot me as I go through the halachas. So let's start and go through, let's see which areas we can go through. Let's see. So I'm going to start off with davening. And I'm going to start off with tefillah b'tzibur, davening in a minyan. So this is, I suppose, probably more for the obligation of davening. I was going to say this side of the room. Okay, but we know that your dedication to tefillah b'tzibur is unquestioned. Always the first one here. Question. You might think this is a crazy shaila, but it is a real shaila. Are you allowed to go on holiday to somewhere where you know there's not going to be a minyan? It's a shaila. And the truth is, if you have choices of destination where all else is equal, then the answer is you have to go somewhere where there's a minyan. It's not, in other words, in halacha, the way it's viewed is, it's not the pshat that, oh, I'm in this place, what can I do? There's no minyan. That's not the way it works. Tefillah b'tzibur is an absolute obligation. For every Jewish male over the age of 13, Shachris, Mincha, and Mariv is to go and daven with 9 other Jews is an absolute obligation. Now, as a halacha, of course, it has parameters, it has shiurim. And this is mentioned, it's in Gemara, and the way it's codified in halacha is as follows. Sorry, I interrupted myself, as I always do. The heta, why is it permitted? When is it ever permitted to go somewhere where there's no minyan? It's for one of 3 reasons. Either for health, for parnasa, or to do a mitzvah. And therefore, I think, from what I understood from the poskim, arguably the heta to go somewhere where there is no minyan is if this is, I said all else being equal, assuming that it is a genuine normative need today to take a break and to go somewhere. I think we can all appreciate that. That is considered to be, to the extent that one is able to, it's necessary. You can call it for your health, restorative. If, like I said, if there are 2 places and they're equal in every other respect, just one has a minyan, one doesn't, then that swings it. There's nothing to talk about. But assuming that you're going somewhere, you want to be by the sea, and your budget and the available properties and all this sort of thing means that you end up somewhere without a minyan, then it would be permitted. However, it doesn't mean that you're entirely off the hook. In what sense? 2 points. Let's talk about when you're baderech, when you're on the way. When you're on the way, the halacha is that if there is a minyan in front of you, there's a difference in halacha whether there's a minyan in front of you or behind you. The side becomes a bit more complicated. I'll explain. So I'm going from A, for the purpose of the video, I'm going from A to B. I'm on my way, and there is a minyan ahead of me. Now, I could maybe stop here tonight, or do I have to keep going? Because I know a little bit further along the road, lefonov, there is a minyan. The halacha is that you would have to travel up to 4 mil, which is a parasol, which, to keep it simple, is 72 minutes. The halacha is you have to keep going. If you have a minyan in front of you, somewhere where you're going anyway, up to 72 minutes travel, and that includes in a car. It's very clear from the poskim. You wouldn't be able to say, okay, we're stopping here tonight. If you know that you are within 72 minutes traveling in the direction that you are going anyway, within a minyan where you can get a mariv, or whatever it is, you have to keep going. It's baseline halacha. Now, behind you would be 18 minutes travel, 1 mil, 18 minutes travel, approximately a kilometer by foot. But in terms of time of travel, and if you're in a car, this is what you would take into account, it would mean going 18 minutes out of your way, behind where you're going. That's when you're on the way, okay? Now you've arrived. You're in your villa. You're in your chateau, wherever it is. Then the halacha changes. And this can happen. This can happen. You have a car. You wake up in the morning. You are within 18 minutes car drive of a city where there is a minyan. You have to go. Makes no difference which direction it is. So you have a radius of a 18-minute drive from where you are. You absolutely have to go. You have a chiyuv tefillah b'tzibur. If it's out of that radius and you had a permission to be there for health, as we said before, then you're off the hook. So it doesn't mean just because I am, I don't know, in a suburb of a town which is where, and you actually have to find out. You actually have to find out where is the nearest minyan, just in order to be able to make the calculation whether you have to go to that minyan. On Shabbos, it would be 18 minutes walk, but there it comes a bit more complicated. We'll talk about that shortly. The same thing, by the way, is for Natilas Yadayim. But before I forget, I want to add something. And again, this is sort of more for the men, but it can also equally be. I highly recommend Zmanim.com, which now has an app. You need to know there's no such thing as a Jew without a watch. You know, teenagers today don't have watches. They have smartphones. That's an interesting, it's a truism. But a Jew always needs to know, when is Plag? When is sunset? When is this Soif Zman Kriyas Shema? When does Shabbos come in? And I recommend Zmanim.com. They now have an app that you can download, and it does all the heavy lifting for you. But you need to know. You absolutely need to know. You need to know the Zmanim. One more point on Tefillah, by the way, and that is davening Mincha and Mariv. We get used to sometimes davening Mincha and Mariv together. We endeavor here to do it in different times of the year. We do it either side of Plag or either side of Shkia. Okay? If, however, you start davening Mincha, well, you shouldn't really start davening Mincha after Shkia, ideally. But let's say B'di'evet, you realize, it's Shkia, and you start davening Mincha, then you're then going to have to stop and wait for Nacht, in order to do Mariv. Because otherwise it's considered self-contradictory. You need to be aware of these. There are certain leniencies. With a minyan, we allow Tarti Desastri, two things that self-contradict, but that's only when you're with a minyan. If you're on your own, or you with 2 or 3 other men or whatever, you don't have a minyan, you don't have that luxury. So you need to be aware of that. Set aside in the apartment, wherever it is that you find yourself, as Rabbeinu Yonah says this in Shari Tshuva, if you're lucky to have a whole room, but one corner of the table or one corner of one room, and call it the Beis HaMedrash. Really important. Not just psychologically. This is the learning area or the davening area. It can be the left side of the pool or whatever. You find, but it's actually really important. Take some Sforim with. Take some Sforim with. There's no, even, just take a Chumash and a Mishnah or something. There has to be, that a Jewish home is not even a temporary home. Without a Chumash, a Mishnah, a Gemara, something, it's not a Jewish home. Okay. What's the view? It's important to have always one the same place, or it is that this place is speaking. The idea is, the basis is a Rabbeinu Yonah and Shari Tshuva, and the idea is that you set aside a little. By the way, this should be at home as well. By the way, there should also be either a room, if you're lucky enough, or a part thereof, which is the space, which is, you elevate it by giving it a designated space. It could be maybe one side of the table, one particular seat, whatever it is. And this is in Corona. This was something that was, I mentioned this in one of my shurim during Corona. You should have a little corner, as it were, which is Hashem's corner in your house, so to speak.
But it can be used for other things also.
You can, yeah. If you have the luxury, again, it depends on available space. Something. The concept is having a dedicated corner, a dedicated part. Right. Let's move on. Let's go on to Natilas Yadayim. Natilas Yadayim. You find yourself, and this can happen either whether you're traveling or you're out and about and you want to have a sandwich, you want to have some, and there's no water. So people get very confused about the different, because there are some. So let's go through it very quickly. It's not all that difficult. Bli neder. I am going to try, if I can, if I have time, to type up the main ideas that we're mentioning here tonight and put them in a single sheet. So, if there is no water, so there is a first thing is, and which is a misnomer. People have got this idea in their heads sometimes that, oh, there's no water, so therefore I just cover my hands or something. That is not true. It is simply not true. You first have to, again, like with a minion, and fascinatingly, it's very similar. You actually first have to, you would have to actually go and see if you could get water somewhere close. And the shir that's given in Shulchan Aruch is, it's exactly the same as the chiyuv for a minion. Those figures we mentioned before, they are the same. So you just duplicate them. Now, if there is no water, yeah, sure. Okay, I'm just going to go through the order of the things, and if there really is no water, then you can wrap. And I say the word wrap because sometimes people think that it's okay. So a glove would be okay. A glove would be okay. It would not be okay just to put your hand in a bag, sort of a loose big bag, and hold the sandwich. That is not good enough according to many poskim. It's lehis atef. It's an ituf. It's not just some sort of loose cover. There is a machlokas, by the way. Sorry, let me just finish these. Give me 3 more minutes, and then Reb Dani, and then yourself. So I want to tell you a story. I'm not a great tzaddik. I'm not even a small tzaddik. But we were once in. Were you with me? We were in LaGuardia or JFK. We were flying back somewhere, and we found a great glat, great hechsher sandwiches with like meat like this, and a proper American sandwich. But we didn't have a cup to wash until Natilas Yadayim. We had water. So on a whim, and this is what I want to say, the shaila is, are you allowed to use disposables? So b'di'evad you can, but it's a big debate whether you can, whether l'chatchila you should or shouldn't. So I went in to buy disposable cups, yeah. It's a machlokes. There are those that are maturit, and like I said, if you have no other option, you may. But I went to buy one of these little souvenir things, and I went and bought a little mug. I didn't even look and see what it was. I bought a little mug, and I washed until Natilas Yadayim. Kept it. We have it at home. We might even still have it. I'm not sure. And you threw it out. Thanks for telling me. And I saw afterwards. I'm lucky I haven't been thrown out. And we looked afterwards, and it said I, heart, NY. I love Natilas Yadayim. But he realized that afterwards. So that is, and if you come across a river or a lake, there are some subtle differences between the two, but let's not really go into that. Certainly in the sea or a large lake, if the water is clean, you tovel your hands in it, and you say, which bracha? Sorry, I tricked you. So, al Natilas Yadayim. You say, no, it's Natilas Yadayim. That's why it wasn't nice of me. I'm sorry. That was really not nice. So if the water is clean, and this would not be by the ocean because the water there is salty, so it's not. I said the ocean. You're quite right. Put the ocean and a lake together. That is not correct. If the water is potable, that's the technical term. If the water is drinkable and it's clean, then even when you dip your hands in, you say al Natilas Yadayim. If the water is not drinkable, for example, in the ocean when it's salty, or if it's not that clean, then you dip your hands in, and then you say, David, you'll get it right this time, I promise you. You weren't listening. And then you say, Al Tevilas Yadayim. I'm giving you a chance. Oh, way out. Never mind. Okay. By the way, you only need to, when you're doing that method, you only need to do it once. You don't need to do it twice. Okay? And that is the end of that. I will now take questions. Yes, Danny.
So this is actually not my question, but can you say something about washing from a bottle which has a narrow
Yes,
thing?
yeah. So if it's narrow and it's not, I forget exactly how narrow, but it needs to come out like a reverse can come out at once. So using that bottle is not great. It's certainly not ideal. It needs to be something ideally with a wider
That's the
spout.
only option. It's okay.
I'm not
Maybe you could push it
100%.
out.
If you can,
Plastic bag is
yeah, no,
push
I don't remember. It's a din in the keli or it's a. I have to check. Yes, it needs to be basically use a something with a large opening.
So water is, if you know there is no water in 72 minutes, if there is no, if you have just a bottle and
Okay.
a family of 5 people.
Well,
So
you can also
what
refill
is-
it. By the way, you can wash more than one person at once.
Yeah, like
There's
this.
no reason why you can't have Rapelski used to do that. You can have them one underneath each other. There's no
Yes,
reason why
like
not.
that, but
Yeah.
From the no, what is my question?
The problem with the bottle is the narrowness of the
I
neck.
understood, but better
Mm.
with the bottle or with the drop to drop the sandwich.
I'm not sure. I'll have to get back to you.
Okay.
I'm
No,
not
but it's
sure.
very important.
I'm not sure how much of it yet. That's a very good point. I'm sure you'll remind me.
Not disposable. What if I have a plastic becher? How do you say in English?
Disposable.
Yeah, the disposable cup. So again,
You
it's.
said it's not good.
I said lechatchila, it's better not to use it. But if you have nothing else, then you may.
But one moment. So I have a question. We have a Shabbaton. No, now I'm really very confused. No, really. We have a Shabbaton. We have these disposable cups. So every time we discuss stuff is not.
I didn't say that. I said it's not lechatchila. It's not ideal. These are then, by the way, not expensive to get these plastic netilas yadayim things.
No, of course.
They're not
we have
expensive.
some,
You
but
should
for
invest in them.
every rooms, for every people, everywhere.
Okay.
So we have.
Ideally, you should. Yes. Ideally, you should.
Okay,
Yes.
So better. So, no, I'm writing.
Yeah. Sure.
Are those cups better? Paper better than plastic? or
This
the same?
is.
What is the problem with the plastic?
It's not mechubad. It's not it's something that is very. So actually, these are probably a bit better. This is something that
Better?
we're more likely to reuse than depending on what had been in it. But certainly, I mean, again, lechatchila. Ideally, one should really use a proper
And the glass from glass?
glass.
Better.
Fine.
Okay.
I don't think glass is disposable. In Berlin, it is. They're throwing it always in these bins, in these big bins. I don't know why, but generally it
In
isn't.
the car, it's better to have the glass or the cup.
Glass. Absolutely.
I saw once, seemed to be mentioned in the Yishe Yisrael, that for Netilas Yadayim in a train, if you're going on a train, they want to say that you cannot take the water in the toilet
Yes.
and wash there. How would, if that is the case?
That
because
is
it's not
another problem. That is potentially another
Because it's not
problem.
drinkable?
because of the tumor of the toilet.
Yeah. I
Why wouldn't it be an eitzah to just wash your hands, keep them wet, leave the room, and then say the bracha outside?
I don't remember what the
Do
poskim say about that, but yeah, but
drying
again,
there? Seemed to be like a big chumrah, no?
I'm not. I don't remember to what extent it's a
Airplane, you
chumrah.
have no
The
eitzah or
airplane.
whatever.
Yeah,
In the
yeah.
train, theoretically, you can wait until the
Bus,
next
the same
station.
thing. You know what?
and
I will
wash it,
clarify
make it
and
to-
I will clarify
to the
to how
shachar.
much of a b'diavad it is and get back to you.
Okay.
Good points. Let's move on. Yes, sure.
Are you allowed to wash in, like, if there's a waterfall or something like that, in the mountains, because maybe there are stones or something like that?
Okay, that's a great question. That's a great question. Can you? There's a waterfall. Can you just put your hands under the waterfall? So the answer, unfortunately, is no, because it's not koyach gavra. It doesn't come for netilas yadayim. It has to come from what's called koyach gavra. It has to come directly from the force of a person. Now, there's a big question in the poskim about when you turn the tap on, the very first bit of water that comes out when you turn the tap on, is that considered koyach gavra or not? That's a big debate in the poskim. To what extent that may be considered koyach gavra. But generally speaking, so for that reason only, it wouldn't be good because you need to do that. It needs to be koyach gavra. Great question. Very good. Okay. Let's get on to kashrus. I think I suppose there's two main areas I still want to speak about. Kashrus and Shabbos, I suppose. Okay? I had put something in about Tvilas Kalim as well. That can happen on holiday, I suppose. But let's go now through Kashrus. Before we get to the probably the more regular shilas that you're expecting, let me just remind you of a couple of things. You are in wherever it is, and you go into the supermarket and you buy some fruit and some vegetables. You need to be aware, you need to look at the labels, like, I suppose, hopefully, like you do here as well. Is it Israeli produce? And then there's two things then that you need to be concerned about, potentially. If it is fruit, you have two problems, which is orla and trumas amaisros. If it's vegetables, you only need to be concerned about trumas amaisros. If you have an art scroll siddur with you, which might be a good idea, or download beforehand, it's relatively straightforward. Once you know what you're doing, you either sign up to a scheme. There are many in England. There are many schemes. In fact, we should probably do a scheme now that I'm thinking. Shouldn't be too hard to make a pruta chamura for my sasheni. So you have because of the different, without going now into all the different things you need to take, right? The truma gedela, maisa rishon, trumas maisa, and maisa oni, maisa sheni. But there's a simple formula, there's a longer one you can say, you can memorize it, or there's even a shorter one. Again, I know it's in the Art Scroll Sidurim. You may want, I'll put this in the sheet as well. If you're not already signed up to a scheme, I mean, I don't know how you do it, maybe you are, you need to also have a coin. You need to have a coin set aside to use for Pidyon Maisa Sheni as well. Again, maybe not the place to go into all the details, but be aware of that, something really to look out for. If it doesn't say a label, you don't need to worry that it might be from Israel. Okay? If it doesn't say, sometimes it doesn't say where it is, or you can't really see. You don't need to worry that it is from Israel. Okay, let's move on to, you've arrived at your chateau, whatever it is, and you're Jewish, so you're hungry. You need food, right? We need food. So what do we do? Where do we start? How do we kasher? What can we kasher? What can't we kasher? What should we kasher? What shouldn't we kasher? I'm of the view that this is meant to be a holiday. Right? It's not Erev Pesach, okay? I mean, that's the idea. So a little bit of forethought and planning, depending on how much luggage room you have, whether you're driving, whether you're flying or whatever. Think about what you might want to take with you, not necessarily the sink or the oven, but you may have you may have a microwave. You may have a microwave with a grill. If you're traveling and if you have the room in the boot, it's probably a good idea just to put it in a crock pot and stuff like that. Don't make your life difficult. Don't show up and say, what do I do now? Work out beforehand as much as you can. The idea is it should be stress-free and it's meant to be a holiday. But you get there, you've got sinks, right? So I'm going to say this because I'm not at all in favor of kashering dishwashers. Certainly not just for a few days or a week for holidays. It is halachically quite problematic. Not a good idea. Don't aim to do that. So then that means you're going to be washing up by hand. It's a good job you take your husband with you or whatever. So it's always a good idea. They've got to have some uses. So the easiest option is to take some plastic bowls keep them in the sink, and one for BT, one for Milky, whatever, and don't bother kashering the sink. It takes time to kasher a sink. It doesn't take 5 minutes to kasher a sink. So if you're careful not to put anything hot down on the surface, on the side of the sink, and to wash up always in the bowl, then you're okay. If that's just a simple practical solution. If you feel, I don't know, if you're feeling particularly, masochistic and frum or something, and you're insisting on kashering the sink, then the first thing to know is that the sink, if it's porcelain, if it's enamel, it can't be kashered. Only if it's metal can it be kashered. And the way to do it is first to clean it thoroughly. Ideally, make sure that it's within 24 hours of the last hot use. Clean it properly, thoroughly, and then pour boiling water as it is boiling from the base of the sink and move up. You may need 2 or 3 kettle loads, and then do over the sink as well. And you probably do the same for the metal draining board. And if you've done it properly, and it was, try and keep your finger on the kettle button as you're doing it. It should be roischin, it should be bubbling as you're doing it, because it's just better. It's better. Do it that way, and that's your sink. Now, The hobs, what do they call them? What do we call them? The things on top. How are we doing for time? Ooh, hurry up a little bit. Sorry, the stove. Oh, the stove. Okay. So there are generally 4 types of stove. You have electric, ceramic, induction, or gas. Okay? Depending on where you're going, gas in a way is easier because you can use the gas flame itself, if you've got good industrial strength gloves, to make the grates properly hot. But you need to be patient. Really, libun is that it should really get white hot. Even if it's libun kal, what's called libun kal, it should get red hot. It needs to be still needs to be pretty hot. So electric and ceramic can be done by pouring hot water on top of it. Although you have to be careful. That I would not advise it with the ceramic one because it can break it. And I'm not sure you'd even be allowed al pichash and mishpat in somebody else's property to pour boiling hot water over their ceramic hot hob. So that's a little bit more problematic. It can. There is yes, that's right. There is special paper, but I'm not sure whether that's with all of them. Regular paper towel with the good ones. I think it's the Bosch. If it's the good ones, the way that it's done very cleverly is that you can put paper towel on it and it won't. Even when you put the pot on top of it, it won't burn. It will not burn. It's very smart.
Induction.
By induction, yes, that's not by induction, not the ceramic. Correct. That would.
It works once, twice, and the third.
Okay. Induction, I would say,
Yes.
so induction, I would say, is not really a great idea. If you find out, obviously, before you go somewhere, find out what do they have. You call up, you ask ahead. That's also a very important part of it. In the same way, you'd call up to see if they have. Yeah. Do they have? That's right.
So why can't you just turn on the burners by ceramic to maximum and leave them for like
You
until it gets so hot?
you could do, but then you still have the problem with ceramic is the outside of it. You have to be very careful with spills. Yeah, but it still can get pretty hot. So you can do it. The one to avoid, let's just. If you can get the mats. So again, it's really about being prepared ahead. It's really about calling ahead and finding out what is there. So if you've got those mats, that's great. That would be great. The regular electric one is to put. Depends what the mat is made of and being kosher. That's already getting complicated. There's a shaila, by the way, is generally whether you can kosher induction altogether. Rabbi Elyashiv held you can't kosher induction. It's a big machlikas amongst the poskim whether induction can be kosher at all. But assuming so, it's not the best. You may have a small ring that you can take with you. A lot of people have this. It might just save you a lot of bother, possibly. Okay, ovens. What do you do with ovens? So, again, it depends. If you are going to be able to cook everything properly wrapped, then your life is very, very easy. If you can get away without cooking things open, wrapped, then it's very easy. Just double wrap everything. You can clean the oven very, very basically, and then just double wrap everything. Make sure that you should clean the racks probably first because it will be sitting, the foil or whatever it is will be sitting on it. But that's easy. If you insist, however, on cooking open, then for whatever reason, then you've got to roll your sleeves up and get to work. There's no shortcut. You have to leave it for 24 hours from previous use. You have to use oven spray, clean it absolutely thoroughly, and then put it on maximum for 1 hour. And even afterwards, I would advise at least a light covering. I would advise it. But according to a number of poskim, that would be good enough. Not according to everybody, but if you have to do something open, that would be okay. Microwaves, again, big machlokas about to what extent and beware, even those that say that you can kosher microwaves, if it has a grill or a browning element, it makes it more complicated. Okay, but those that are lenient to kosher microwaves, Moshe Feinstein says first of all you have to wait 24 hours, but cleaning it thoroughly and putting in a boiling water in it for 10 to 15 minutes is, which is quite a long time actually for a microwave. According to some, that would be okay. If you're going to keep things covered, then it's much easier. But it's really, the problems only become when you're insisting on doing stuff open. So that is basically that. Shabbos, quickly go through some, we're kind of out of time, but I want to quickly get in. Shabbos, the first thing to be aware of, which people are often not aware of, where you are staying, is the last thing you probably think of. Find out where you're staying, and if you're in an apartment complex, you could have a real problem with Eruvei Chatzeros. If there are other Jews in the complex, you would have to make an Eruv. I'm not going to give you all the details of doing that now, but be aware of it. Call me up, I'll show you how to do it. Be aware, even if you have a house, you may not be able to carry in the garden. Don't automatically assume that you're going to be able to. You have to make sure that it is properly enclosed. Again, that's not always so easy to work out. Sometimes you may have bushes and there are gaps and things. Call up. That's another thing to be aware of. And finally is tchumen, eruvei tchumen. If you're in a relatively uninhabited area, it's a very, very important halacha. You only have, back to our 18 minutes of walk, you have 2,000 amas exactly to walk. If you step 1 foot beyond the 2,000 amas, you are confined to 4 amas in every area, every direction till the end of Shabbos. Don't mess. Not worth it.
How much is 200?
It's approximately a kilometer. Give or take. I can give you more precise measurements. But sometimes it's not clear where you're... Sorry? If you're within city, then it gets... There's very complicated halachas about how you understand what a city is. You square it off. And there's complicated halachas as how you square it off. How do you square off a city? Sometimes it can be irregular. And then you have, if you're within a city, you can walk the entire city. Beyond it, you can only walk 2,000 amas. Now, what's called a city in halacha? Again, that's a bit of a question. And finally, final points. I'll come back to it in a second. 2 last final points, which is swimming on Shabbos, bathing on Shabbos. There's a lot of ignorance around that. The bottom line is you can't swim or bathe on Shabbos. That's kind of the bottom line. Whichever way you look at it, the halacha developed in a number of different ways. There was Gezeras of Balonim, and there's an ancient minhag going back about 1,000 years, and then there is the maximum that you can do is possibly, depending, is you could dip your feet into the pool or something. It's kind of, and even then be careful. Yeah. Bathing on Shabbos is basically a no-no. And the final point, which I actually mentioned to people last year, and I was really, really surprised, if I'm honest, which is the concept, forgive me, I'm sure you who are here know this, but it has to be said, the concept of mixed swimming, being at a beach, which is with other people within eyesight, and swimming is absolutely awesome. There's no question about that. There is no room for leniency at all. So if you're within a complex, going and sitting and being in the pool when there are other people there is strictly forbidden. There is no leniency at all.
For men or for women, for children?
So there's two. It's a good point. So let us say as follows. For men, it's probably an Issa D'Oraisa. Okay? It's V'lei Sasuru, V'nishmarta Mikol Davar Ra. I mean, how many things there's no question about it. For children, chinuch would apply. Chinuch would apply. So the idea, how old are you?
12.
Nothing to talk about. I would say
From 9 years old.
From 9 for sure. The question is, again, it depends on to some extent on the awareness of the child, how developed they are, but it's certainly an important part of tznius. So, and it means, we've many times we've done this where you go to a beach, you just get savvy. You know how to find the bit that nobody else is there, or you just go there and they all walk away. I don't know, whichever way you look at it. But you find somewhere where you've got not within eyesight of anybody else. As for women, also shouldn't be done. The question is whether, sorry? Well, yeah. Okay. So if you're in the pool with other men who are not your relatives, that's not something that would be, it certainly would not be appropriate. How osir is it? We can argue over that, depending on whether they're Jewish or not Jewish, potentially depending on, but certainly from a chinuch perspective, it's certainly not going into a pool with other.
Dressed with clothes on. Sort of like a bikini or something.
If you are in a mixed pool with other people for a not family, it's certainly not ideal. How osa is it? One could debate. It may not, according to some poskim, if they're not Jewish, it might not be strictly osa, but it's certainly not ideal. That's for sure. And that's the other thing, to realize and to remember that tznius on holiday is also an important. The halachas are no different. The halachas don't change. The halachas remain constant, and we should look at a vacation, like I said, as taking the ziv and the hoid and the hoda with you, and recreating your environment whilst you're relaxing and having a great time. This was just a short synopsis of some of the issues. There no doubt will be more, and I'm sure there will be follow-up in terms of questions, but I don't want to overstay my welcome either, because there's a mincha here also in a few minutes.